we're going to look at the next set of three properties kind of as a whole group. And when we look at these, we want to keep in mind the acronym MADSPAM. And what that stands for is our product of powers property. Product means multiply, and so the thing that gets multiplied is the coefficients. Our exponents are going to add when we multiply. Our quotient of powers, well, quotient is the result of dividing, and so we will divide our coefficients, but we subtract exponents. And then finally, our power of a power property. So this says if we have something raised to a power, and we raise that thing to a second power, so power of a power, our powers are taken on the coefficients, but we multiply exponents. So whatever the exponent is inside parentheses, we multiply that by the exponent outside parentheses for our variables. Let's take a look at some examples. So we will look at the easy examples for all of these first, and then we'll go to the more challenging ones. So whenever we are multiplying, like it says here, we're going to multiply coefficients and add exponents. Well, if I have x squared times x to the 6th, there really isn't a coefficient there. We could say it's a coefficient of 1. So either way, that's going to give me just a 1. But I need to add my exponents. So 2 plus 6 is going to give me x to the 8th. The reason for that, if you want to kind of prove it to yourself, is that x squared is x times x. And then if we multiply that times x to the 6th, well, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more x's. And so I have 8 x's multiplied together, x multiplied by itself 8 times, x to the 8th. This next one, y times y to the 5th. Well, we need to remember that if we have a plain variable, it's actually an exponent of 1. So 1 plus 5 is 6. I get y to the 6th. When we divide, we subtract exponents. So if we have x to the 5th divided by x squared, that's going to give me x to the 3rd. Let's prove to ourselves why that works. Our top is 5 x's multiplied together, and the bottom is 2 x's multiplied together. So we could say that these 2 x's cancel and these 2 cancel to 1, and so we are left with x times x times x, x to the 3rd. Similarly, we can say x squared divided by x, and remember this is a first power here, so 2 minus 1 is simply 1. X to the first power, but we don't usually write a first power, so it's just simply x. Finally, we have powers raised to a power. And remember, our exponents multiply. So x squared to the 4th power, if we expand that, it's x squared times x squared times x squared times x squared. Remember that if we multiply things with powers, we just add their exponents. So 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2, well, that's x to the 8th. But remember, you can use the little shortcut that we multiply our exponents. So instead of expanding and using our product of powers property, we can simply use the power of a power property. It says multiply exponents. 2 times 4 gives me that 8. Similarly, if I have y to the 3rd and I raise that to the 2nd power, 3 times 2 is 6, so I get a y to the 6th. Now let's look at our more challenging examples. So we have in parentheses negative 2a squared b, and then in a second set of parentheses 7a cubed b. Remember that when we are dealing with a product of powers, we multiply our coefficients together, but exponents add. So if we look at our coefficients first, I have a negative 2 times the 7, that's going to give me negative 14. Now I'll look at my a's. I have a to the 2nd power and a to the 3rd power. If I add 2 plus 3, that gives me a to the 5th power. And then finally I'll look at my b's. I have a b and a b. These are both b to the power of 1. They have a 1 as an exponent. So 1 plus 1 is 2. I get a b squared. R to the negative 12th times r to the 10th. Well, negative 12 plus 10, that's going to give me r to the negative 2 power. However, now we can use our negative exponent property to get rid of the negative symbol by saying that the reciprocal of r is 1 over r, and our exponent will be positive. Many times when you are asked to simplify your exponents, you want to get rid of negative ones by going ahead and taking that reciprocal. Now let's look at our quotient of powers property. Remember that when we are finding a quotient, which is the result of dividing, we divide coefficients, but we subtract exponents. So 27x squared divided by 9x to the 5th. 27 divided by 9 is 3. And 2 minus 5 is negative 3. So 3x to the negative 3rd power. We want to get rid of that negative using our negative exponent property. So that's going to give me 3 over x to the 3rd. Now be careful here. Notice that the 3 stayed in the top. And the reason for that is that it's by itself. It does not have a power on it. The only way that the 3 would move to the bottom is if this entire thing had been in parentheses and the whole thing raised to the negative 3rd power. But that's not what we have. We just simply have 3 multiplied by x to the negative 3rd. So the only thing that moves to the bottom that we take the reciprocal of is the thing with the negative exponent, the x. All right, let's take a look at one more. 18h to the 4th over 2h to the 4th. Couple of ways to approach this. For either method, 18 divided by 2 is going to give me 9. But then with the h's, we could think of a couple different things. We could either use our property and say 4 minus 4 is 0. And we know that anything raised to the 0 power is 1. Or we can simply say, oh, I have h multiplied by itself 4 times on top and on bottom, so they cancel. So either way, our final answer is 9. All right, here's another one of those where we have both numbers and letters in parentheses and raised to a power. So this is going to be, remember that our coefficients get raised to the power, so it's 5 to the 5th power, and then exponents multiply. So 5 to the 5th, I have an x to the 1st and a y to the 1st. So x to the 1st power, 1 times 5 is going to give me 5. So this will be multiplied by x to the 5th. Same thing with y. A 1y times a 5 is going to give me 5. And then finally, z is raised to the 3rd power, and 3 times 5 is 15. So we could write this in final form, all put together and simplified as 3125, use your calculator if you need to on that, x to the 5th, y to the 5th, z to the 15th power.